Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and it's the 26th of February, 2024. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So kicking off today, it's 2.5 weeks or less than 2.5 weeks before Dencun goes live on the Ethereum mainnet, so I thought I'd recap why I'm most excited about EIP-4844, what do I think are the most awesome things about it, and it turns out there's actually a lot. Like obviously you guys know that EIP-4844 has been kind of like trotted out as this scalability solution for rollups, and it definitely is, but it does come with more than that. So I put out this list on Twitter today where I said that EIP-4844 adds a new transaction type to Ethereum called blobs that is purpose-built to enable cheaper fees for rollups and layer 2s. And I think that purpose-built section of what I said there is the most important because, yeah, it has been purpose-built for rollups and layer 2s. And I know that I've said in the past that it can be used for other things such as, inscriptions, and I'm sure people are going to be using them for that and other such things like that. But it's been purpose-built for rollups and layer 2s. Like that's the whole point of them. And I think over the longer term, then the rollups, or I guess layer 2s generally, are going to be the only kind of entities using them because the inscription stuff doesn't really make much sense. I mean, the blobs expire after 18 days, right? So it doesn't really make much sense to inscribe something since the whole point of inscriptions is to have something that lasts forever. That's not going to happen with blobs, right? And then I say blobs have their own separate fee market, which means they are unaffected by fee spikes of non-blob transactions on layer 1. This is something that I don't see talked about enough, and I actually think this is the main highlight of blobs generally. Yeah, okay, the scalability stuff's awesome, of course, but I think that this is more of a scalability boost, or at least something that is more important to the wider Ethereum ecosystem than blobs themselves, because of the fact that this is the first time, I believe, that ETH is going to have what's starting to look like a multi-dimensional fee market, which is what Vitalik has written about before, and it's basically this concept of local fee markets. Now, I know some other chains have them, most notably Solana, but I think Solana's implementation is definitely different. They have this kind of notion of hotspots, and it's definitely they are metering things in a different way to what Ethereum is. I think Ethereum is taking a simpler approach here where essentially blobs have their own separate fee market with their own gas price, and everything else has the the normal fee market that we're all used to. And in practice, the way this would work is, let's say that gas, or the normal gas, not the blob gas, is at 20 Gwei, and then that spikes up to 100 Gwei. Well, today, because rollups use call data, which is part of the normal gas market, that means rollups are affected by this gas spike. They have to basically pay the 100 Gwei gas fees. But when blobs are introduced, and if these rollups are using blobs, then the blob fee market would stay at whatever it was at the time. So if the non-blob fee market goes up to 100 Gwei, the blob fee market would stay at, if it was, let's just say if it was at 5, it would stay at 5. There would be no connection between the two markets. And that to me is really awesome because it means that rollups no longer have to deal with layer 1 fee spikes. And we all know that layer 1 fee spikes are mostly due to random things like NFT mints and meme coins and stuff like that, right? So rollups no longer have to deal with that sort of stuff, which is great. I think that's one of the best features of blobs, if not the best feature, honestly, and it's not talked about enough, so that's why I wanted to bring it up today. Now, of course, as I mentioned, blobs expire after 18 days, which means that the increased storage burden on Ethereum full nodes is very minimal, so that preserves decentralization. And this is the real superpower of blobs, I think, in terms of how it scales without sacrificing decentralization, is that it is purpose-built for rollups, right? It creates a new separate fee market, but then on top of that, because of the fact that blobs are basically adding more storage to the network, we didn't want to kick people off the network for storing them. And because basically, if you're storing like historical state of blobs, there's only a few use cases for that. I mean, obviously the biggest one is data analysis, being able to analyze what happened on the chain in the past, but also I think taxes is another big one where people want to go back and see what transactions they have for taxes, but most people do that through third-party services, right? Like Etherscan and other such things. They don't do it running their own archive node, for example, for Ethereum L1. So the same is going to be true of these L2s and the blobs. The blobs are just going to be stored by their service providers, and then they'll be able to serve up that information to people who need it. Whether they charge for it or not is up to them, of course. And the beautiful thing about blobs is that they're a one-of-n trust assumption, which means you only need one honest party to be storing that data. And that honest party can be you, which is awesome, right? But the fact that they expire means that we can get a lot more scalability out of them than we otherwise would have, because it means that after 18 days, a full node, a normal full Ethereum node, will just purge this from from its database, and then you won't have to have increased kind of node requirements. But if we didn't do this, there would be increased node requirements. I don't know the exact math off the top of my head, but blobs do add a pretty significant amount of storage to the database. I think it's in the terabytes per year or something like that. And because they expire, that is obviously very manageable there. And then on my next point, I said, increasing the number and size of blobs is trivially easy and can be done at every hard fork going forward. And this, again, falls into what I was saying about them expiring. Because they expire, we can just keep increasing them as time goes on, as more people get kind of like comfortable with blobs, as the network becomes comfortable with blobs, and as we see that there's more need for them, because obviously at some point they'll become saturated, then we can keep increasing them at every hard fork. And there also is a way, I believe, to do this without a hard fork. Not sure if that was implemented. I remember I highlighted that Terrence from Prylabs had written something called EIP-4844 Plus, I believe, which was essentially being able to increase the size, I think, of blobs, maybe not the number of blobs, but the size of blobs without having to do a hard fork. So again, that would be very, very cool to be able to do as well. But the fact that we can do it at every hard fork in a really trivially easy way, all it is adjusting a couple of variables is huge, because that just gives extra space to these rollups, drops their fees potentially even more than what we'll see post Dencun, and then we can do that at every upgrade after Dencun goes live, of course. And then finally here I said EIP-4844 lays the groundwork for full danksharding with data availability sampling that will enable even greater scalability for layer 2s. So the holy grail really is data availability sampling with blob expiry. So what essentially this would give us, because the blobs expire, we get to preserve decentralization as I described, and on top of that, you have the fact that with data availability sampling, only a small part of the I guess like node operator set needs to hold a small part of the total data that's being produced by these blobs in order to satisfy the data availability commitment up to 18 days, or whatever the blob expiry is set to at that point. That enables us to essentially increase the size and number of blobs substantially. And I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, of course, but substantially. And this potentially gives us a 100 to 1,000 times scalability increase for rollups, of course. And then couple that with things like the Verge and statelessness. I think Vitalik's spoken about this before. We could see 100,000 plus transactions per second on these rollups combined, which would be very, very cool, of course. But obviously TPS isn't everything, and not all TPS is created equal, as I've talked about before. There is the whole kind of notion of the fact that I believe blockchains are a root of trust, so there's going to be a lot of compression going on at these rollups to kind of like compress that down to L1 and so on and so forth from there. But yeah, that's a quick recap on EIP-4844, why I'm so excited about it, why it's awesome. It is not a small upgrade, that's for sure. It is a large upgrade with a lot of implications for the network, and I'm just super excited to see it go live on March 13th, obviously, as part of the Dencun upgrade, because of the fact that we finally get to see what kind of, I guess, what kind of cost reduction we see on these rollups, because we have only speculation to go off right now. We don't know. It's impossible to know, because we have obviously blobs running on test nets, but that's a test net environment, completely different to what it is on mainnet. So we're not going to know until it's live on mainnet, but it's shortly coming. Less than 2.5 weeks, as I said. So we'll know sooner rather than later. All right, so speaking of Dencun, there's another EIP that I wanted to highlight for you guys, and I did think that, I did forget to highlight this because I thought that this EIP was actually going to be part of Petra. I actually didn't even realize it was part of Dencun because I've been so focused on 4844 that I didn't even realize this EIP was coming as part of Dencun. So this is EIP 4788. Now, of course, it's probably something that I don't think I've ever mentioned on the refuel in the context of Dencun. I think I've mentioned it a while ago in the context of what it can enable, but essentially what this EIP does is it improves communication between the execution and consensus layers of Ethereum, basically creating an quote-unquote enshrined oracle. This enables trustless communication between the CL and the EL, which has a huge impact on staking pools like Rocket Pool. No longer will they have to rely on a third-party oracle to pass information such as the status of a validator from the consensus layer to the execution layer. It may not seem like it on the surface, but this is a huge unlock for Ethereum staking generally. I'm very excited to see this EIP go live with Dencun. Now, I just want to break this down a bit further for you guys because you may be confused about why this is so exciting. So a lot of you will know that currently within Rocket Pool there is this Oracle DAO that I am personally a part of, and there's a bunch of other members that are part of it. Now, this Oracle DAO, the whole point of them, or at least most of the point of the Oracle DAO, is to pass information from the consensus layer to the execution layer so that Rocket Pool can work. Part of that information is something like validator balances, or when a validator is exited from the validator set, if they're part of the Rocket Pool system there. And the reason why that has to be done via a trusted oracle, or a group of people that are part of a trusted oracle, is because we don't have that communication between the execution layer and the consensus layer. With this EIP, we will have that communication. Now, I don't think the Oracle DAO is being a sunset, immediately after Dencun. I believe Rocket Pool has to upgrade their system in order to take advantage of this new EIP, but that will happen. And then most of the duties that the Oracle DAO is doing today will be able to be done trustlessly because this Oracle is now enshrined in the protocol. It basically means that there's no need to trust this Oracle DAO, which is awesome, obviously. And this, it doesn't just apply to Rocket Pool, it applies to basically any service out there that uses this. I believe that Lido even uses this as part of their kind of system, and a bunch of other services out there. Don't quote me on that, of course, but I mean, there's currently no other way to pass information around now from the consensus layer to the execution layer around things like validator balances and the status of a validator. But there will be with EIP-4788. So I actually consider this EIP to be the second most exciting after EIP-4844. And as I said, the reason why I hadn't highlighted it yet, or up until this point, is because for some reason it slipped through the cracks and I didn't realize it was becoming part of Dencun. Silly me for focusing too much on 4844, but hey, it's awesome that this is coming with Dencun. This means that we can have more trustless staking pools here. And then there are two other EIPs, I believe, coming as part of Petra, or at least slated for inclusion as part of Pectra, I should say, which are going to enable trustless withdrawals for validators, which essentially means that instead of having to trust a service like a staking pool, for example, like Rocket Pool or Lido, to withdraw the validator for you when you request a withdrawal, you can now do that. Well, after the EIP goes in Pectra, you can do that trustlessly using the execution layer. So just sending a transaction on chain, and then you'll be able to exit it, and they won't be able to stop you from doing that. So yeah, a bunch of huge upgrades coming to staking over the next couple of hard forks, I should say. So it's great to see that playing out there. All right, another research post from Mike Nutter. Man, this guy's on fire. He's been putting out research posts around a bunch of different topics for a while now. And if you guys haven't actually watched the Ethereum roadmap update episode on Bankless with Mike and Domothy, you should definitely go check that out. They're both gigabrains, and I learned a lot from them listening to that podcast that I didn't already know, of course. But Mike published this post alongside someone called Max Resnick, who works at SpecialMech, who's the head of research there. So what this post is, it's all about concurrent block proposers in Ethereum. Now, of course, there's an abstract at the top for you to read, and there's also the whole post for you to read. But essentially, from what I read from this post is that why you would want to do this is basically to, increase censorship-resistant guarantees. And I think that by doing that, obviously, coupled with things like inclusion lists and a bunch of the other stuff that we have with censorship resistance, or working on with censorship resistance, it really does strengthen kind of Ethereum's CR properties pretty substantially, I think. And, I posted this in the Daily Gwei Discord channel the other day, but essentially, Greystroke, someone who's very active in the Daily Gwei Discord channel, is very passionate about privacy and very, very passionate about censorship resistance. And he was kind of, I was having a back and forth with him about inclusion lists and where we kind of like agreed and disagreed. And then he was talking about things like stealth addresses and encrypted mempools, and how those things are really interesting, and those things are more interesting to him than something like inclusion lists. And those things are both being worked on in the context of Ethereum as well. I mean, I highlighted stealth addresses, I believe, last week on a Refuel. There's a paper that was put out by Tony and colleagues there. And then encrypted mempools, Shutter Network, I've highlighted a bunch of times before as well. So these things are in development. So we have inclusion lists, we have stealth addresses, we have encrypted mempools, we have EPBS, which isn't really about censorship resistance at its heart. It's more about just like getting rid of the relayer role, because the relayer role in the MEV boost pipeline is just shitty for a number of different reasons. But it does have the added benefit of potentially and more likely than not improving censorship resistance on Ethereum. And now we have this concurrent block proposers kind of idea, which should increase censorship resistance even more. So we have like 4 things that I just named. There's probably more than 4, to be honest, but there's like 4 things right now that are being worked on in parallel in order to improve Ethereum censorship resistance. And as I've discussed before, I think I discussed this on one of last week's episodes, the whole point of a blockchain is censorship resistance in my eyes. Like if you don't have that, then you may as well just create a centralized database, and you'd be much better off doing that. There's no point having a blockchain if it is not maximally censorship resistant. That's my true belief here, because really at the end of the day, like that's the value you get for giving up all the other stuff that a blockchain is really shitty at, such as, you know, being fast, being cheap to use, so on and so forth. You give up all of that, and you basically purposely shoot yourself in the foot in order to gain that censorship resistant property. So as I said last week, that is the most important thing, and I'm really, really encouraged to see just how many things are being worked on in parallel to improve Ethereum censorship resistance, because it has been tested, you know, since OFAC sanctioned Tornado Cash back in August of 2022, I believe. I think it was August 8th, 2022. And the reason I remember the date is because that's my anniversary with my fiance. It's kind of funny how that fell on the same date there. But yeah, August 8th, I believe, 2022 is when Tornado Cash got sanctioned. And since then, there's just been a massive kind of amount of attention being put on censorship resistance on Ethereum. And I think that the common belief amongst a lot of the Ethereans is that censorship resistance is the most important property. It is what we should be optimizing for, and that's what we're doing with a bunch of these things. So anyway, you can go give this research post a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so a couple of weeks ago, I believe I spoke about how Rocket Pool is currently undergoing some massive changes, and that Rocket Pool is going to have a quote-unquote revenge arc over the next 12 to 18 months. And I highlighted the upgrades back then that were coming or that were proposed. Now, Whack on Twitter today put out a great thread all about the new tokenomics proposal for Rocket Pool and for the RPL token. Now, I've touched on this before briefly, but Whack does an excellent job breaking this whole thing down in his thread. I'll link it in the YouTube description below, but I just wanted to put this on your radar because I know there are a lot of RPL holders amongst you guys, and I'm one myself, of course, but like I don't, try to encourage anyone to like buy or sell or try and trade RPL or really any token besides ETH, I guess. Like it's kind of hard for me not to come off like super bullish on ETH and for me to not to kind of like come off as me encouraging you to buy ETH, which I'm not, by the way. But like I think my bullish energy is contagious. But the reason why I highlight this is because for a lot of Rocket Pool node operators, it's been, or I guess like you could say all Rocket Pool node operators, the most frustrating thing about the system has been that you needed the RPL token to be used as collateral when spinning up mini pools. And I'll be honest, like it's something that it's frustrated me as well, because whenever the RPL price falls, you become under-collateralized and you have to add more RPL to become collateralized again. And it kind of like catches you off guard, I think. I think the first time I figured it out, I was like, okay, well, I didn't expect that to happen, and it caught me off guard. And I think that's true of a lot of people. And it also severely limits the growth of the Rocket Pool ecosystem. Now, of course, this proposal and a bunch of others are trying to tackle this that Rocket Pool have put out, the Rocket Pool community have put out here, which is great to see. And I believe that this will also enable things like staking without the RPL token. And the way they're trying to, I think, change the tokenomics of the protocol is that they want to remove that RPL requirement while still preserving the value flow to RPL the token. And from people I've spoken to about this and some of the comments that I've read, it seems that the current proposal that Whack is talking about in this Twitter thread basically addresses that and basically is actually even more bullish for RPL and drives more value to RPL than the current state of the tokenomics of the Rocket Pool protocol, which is obviously the main goal of this. You don't want to be taking value away. You want to definitely be adding value while still preserving what makes Rocket Pool awesome, which is having a wide, diverse, and decentralized node operator set. So if they can do that, I mean, that's the holy grail right there of staking pools. So I'm rooting for them, of course. You guys know I've been an absolutely massive fan of Rocket Pool for a while now. All the RPL that I own is held on Sassel.eth, so you can check that there. I'm not planning to sell that anytime soon or anything like that. That's just sitting there as part of my ODAO bond and whatever I needed for mini pools, of course. But yeah, I'm bullish on Rocket Pool. I'm not going to make any comments on the token. Like, as I said, I don't like doing that, but I'm really bullish on Rocket Pool. I'm really bullish on these upgrades that are coming to them. They are still the biggest staking pool by far on Ethereum right now. They still got the most node operators by far. And we should definitely be kind of like, we should definitely be supporting them as much as possible because we obviously want to increase the decentralization of the Ethereum network and the validator set of Ethereum, and Rocket Pool is at the forefront of doing that. All right, moving on to a big announcement, I guess. It's not it's technically an announcement, but it's more of a kind of proposal from the Uniswap Foundation. So they've proposed a new governance proposal to turn the fee switch on for Uni holders. Now, of course, this has been a long time coming. This has been something that's been speculated on by people for a very long time now. And basically what this means is that it would reward Uni holders who have staked and delegated their tokens with fee revenue from the actual protocol. Now, of course, this had a very positive effect on the Uni token. I believe it went up like 80% in a day or something, which is absolutely crazy. But I think that just shows how offside people were on Uni, and the fact that a lot of people were probably shorting it as well. It was just kind of funny to see that kind of price movement off of something like this. And I think that when you look at kind of Uni as maybe the flag bearer of DeFi, or especially on Ethereum and L2s, then people look at Uni as the flag bearer of kind of token value accrual. And even though Uni has really just been, I guess, a quote unquote useless governance token for all of its life up until if this proposal gets approved, right? It's still worth a lot. I don't know. I think its fully diluted value after the pump is worth over 10 billion. But before the pump, it was 5 or 6 billion or something like that. So it's still worth a lot, right? Even though it didn't have a fee switch on, didn't have fee accrual to it, but now it might. I mean, it's not. This is just a proposal, as I said. It hasn't been approved yet. But the fact that this has been proposed by the Uniswap Foundation itself, which is, I guess, separate to Uniswap Labs and the Uniswap protocol, but I mean, separate in name. I think they will work very closely together, of course, but what I wanted to talk about specifically was not so much this proposal, because I do think this proposal will probably get passed at this point. But what I want to talk about is, for the longest time, it was believed that Uniswap didn't want to do this, or at least the core Uniswap kind of people didn't want to do this because of regulatory fears. Obviously, if you do something like enable a fee switch on the Uni token, and then people who hold Uni token get value, basically, I guess you could call it a dividend, so to speak, the SEC wouldn't like this and basically say, okay, well, here there's a profit sharing kind of agreement in place here. That means that Uni is a security, right? And they go after Uniswap Labs and so on and so forth. So there's one or two things that could have happened now. First thing is that they've just said, screw it, we're just going to do it anyway. And if the SEC comes after us, then so be it, right? But the second option is more interesting, or the second kind of possibility is more interesting here. Second possibility is that the core Uniswap people and the VCs that back them and hold a lot of Uni, for some reason, I don't know why, but they now feel comfortable with doing this, and they feel comfortable enough doing this that the SEC won't target them. And this then opens up the Pandora's box of, okay, if they feel this way, then what does the regulatory environment in the US look like right now? Has it actually changed enough for tokens, or for, I guess, teams to enable fee capture on their tokens? Because if that is true, if that regulatory regime has changed in the background and we're just not aware of it yet, that is a huge unlock for DeFi. That is a huge unlock for tokens generally that are built, or I guess DeFi that's built in the US, tokens that are issued out of the US. And that means that logically at some point in the near future, US users shouldn't be barred from airdrops anymore. We might be able to bring things back like ICOs, right? I'm thinking far ahead, but that is if the second possibility plays out. And the reason why I think that second possibility isn't something that is a low chance of actually playing out, and something that's a relatively high chance of playing out, is because of the reasons I've given before around the SEC approving a spot ETH ETF. I really do think that the Democrats in the US are going to try to do everything they can this year to win as many votes as possible and to cause as little drama as possible within, and to make themselves look as good as possible to obviously the US people, because this election is critical for them, right? It's critical for them. They really do believe it's critical for them. They believe it's critical for the country. I mean, I'm obviously not in the US. I don't know the whole politics around it, but it's obvious that this is one of the most, if not the most consequential elections in US history, right? At least from what I've read about this, at least from kind of people I've spoken to that live in the US, that is the environment, that is the kind of vibe, that is the, I guess, expectation at this point. So if they are trying to do whatever they can to keep people on side, to keep people voting Democrat, right, instead of going over to the Republicans, then it stands to reason that they could, in fact, become more friendly towards crypto in order to win those votes, right? And by doing this, there's a few ways they do this. One is they stop going after crypto projects with like those frivolous lawsuits like the SEC has been doing, right? And I think that the SEC hasn't brought any of those lawsuits for a little while now. But I mean, they can in the future. And if they do in the future, then maybe my kind of thesis goes out the window there, or my theory goes out the window there. But there's an aspect to it. If they withdraw their lawsuits against Coinbase and Kraken, maybe not Binance, as I've just said before, Binance is a separate issue here, but if they withdraw the lawsuit against Coinbase and Kraken over the whole securities, unregistered securities trading thing, that is a huge signal as well, basically saying that, okay, well, the SEC has basically given up on trying to have a war on crypto and declare everything a security, which means that Elizabeth Warren gave up, which means that Biden's administration generally gave up. So that would be a massively positive signal. And that would all but guarantee that the ETH spot ETFs would get approved. Like, as I've said before, I think it's very, very political. So it stands to reason that at least leading up to the election, we should see a friendlier regulatory regime, even if they don't want to be friendly, even if Elizabeth Warren absolutely hates crypto, even if Gensler hates crypto, that doesn't matter. What matters is what they need to happen in order to get those votes. And I think that they know that the crypto industry, at least now, is huge, is big enough to win massive lawsuits against the SEC, to spend the money to win those lawsuits. I think at this point, they've kind of realized, and now that TradFi's involved too, like Larry Fink, and who's obviously a massive Democrat supporter and donor, I think that they're just really going to not try to piss off the crypto people now. Even if they hate us, even if they hate everything about crypto, even if they still think it's about money laundering and so on and so forth and whatever, I think that, and also in the face of Elizabeth Warren's bullshit about Hamas using crypto, right, that was debunked everywhere, I think in the face of that, they've slowly realized and come to terms with the fact that they need to have crypto kind of money and people on side. They obviously want to have Larry Fink on side, and he's really big on crypto right now. It's not just about the spot ETH ETF or the spot BTC ETF. He was talking about tokenization. Like, he wants to incorporate crypto into their entire stack there. So if we do all of that and we wear our tinfoil hat a little bit, right? I think I'm getting a little bit wah-wah tinfoil hat right now, but if we kind of consider all that, I do think it stands to reason that the hostility towards crypto from the SEC, from the Democrats, should subside at least for this year. If they win the election, who knows what's going to happen then? Do they go like turbo fuck crypto again? I don't know, right? Maybe at that point it's too late for them to kind of change their stance there. But it really does feel like there has been a shift here. Whether that it's happened in the background and will stay in the background, I don't know, but I'm sure that there's going to be more positive stuff going forward. And as I've iterated before, as I've talked about before, I'm just going to reiterate my stance here. I do believe the spot ETH ETFs are going to get approved. And again, that is another huge win for crypto on the regulatory front. And I think that this proposal getting passed for Uniswap is a big win as well. Especially if it passes and the SEC doesn't go after Uniswap or DeFi teams generally. I think they already probably spoke to these teams. From what I've read before, of what I've heard before, they already spoke to these teams about this. And they probably think that, wow, okay, these teams have a lot of money. They have the backing of really big VCs. And we've already lost in court a bunch of times, and it makes us look really, really bad. And TradFi now wants to get involved with crypto. I don't know. It just seems like something that would be a completely stupid thing to do at this point, is being hostile towards crypto, especially if you are trying to win an election as big as the one that's coming up in the US. I think that because of all of that, we're going to see some friendlier kind of stuff going forward. But anyway, that's my tinfoil hat. I'll either be wrong or right. Maybe after this refuel, I'll go on Twitter and see that the SEC has sued another kind of project in crypto or something, and I'll just go back and try and edit. Nah, we're not going to edit this out of the video. I never do that. But I just, when I think about it, I'm just like, yeah, the dots all connect here, but I don't know if I'm wearing a tinfoil hat and looking like Charlie Day from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, that meme where he's looking at the board and there's all this just kind of stuff that he's connecting together and it means nothing. I don't know if you guys have seen the episode. Basically, there's nothing going on. It's just like him being crazy. But maybe that's me, or maybe I'm right on this. Who knows? I think I was one of the kind of like only people saying that there was a 100% chance that the BTC spot ETFs would get approved, and for a long time as well. I was constantly saying, I'm like, there's 100% is going to get approved by Jan 10th for this, and this reason. And I think I'm one of the only people that are saying that ETH spot ETFs are going to get approved by May 23rd. And if I'm wrong about that, I'll own it, of course, and I'll say I was wrong about that. People can make fun of me, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. But if I'm going to kind of believe something, I'm going to state it publicly, and I'm going to put my weight behind it. So my weight is still behind that, but we'll obviously have to wait and see how that plays out there. Anyway, I want to get through the rest of this stuff before I go overtime here. So I've talked about IntMax before. It's a It's a project that I'm actually an angel investor in. I should disclose that, of course. But they're basically focusing a lot of their efforts on Plasma. Now, for those of you who don't know, Plasma was this scaling solution that was really big in like 2018, 2019, and it eventually became rollups. And originally, Optimism was known as Plasma Group, and they were at the forefront of this. But Plasma recently has been making a comeback, with IntMax, I think, being at the forefront of developing it. So today, they've introduced or announced something called Plasma Next, which is the first completion of Plasma and the de facto resolution of the impossibility of stateless blockchains. They continue, we have been able to eliminate the online requirement from Plasma. This can be verified in both the paper and the code. Now, of course, you can check out this ETH research post for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But I mean, what's really cool about this is that for a long time, people thought Plasma was like unworkable. It was dead. It had no use. You know, we're just going to do roll-ups. But it turns out that that's not the case. And Vitalik actually wrote a post about this recently. And I think that once Vitalik is putting his weight behind something, and once smart people like the IntMax team is putting their weight behind something, I think people should start to pay attention more here, because it's no longer just like a research, can we do it thing? It's okay, we researched that and it turns out we can do it. Here's how we do it. And this is what's described in this in this research post here, which you definitely go check out. So, and I think it's been enabled by zero knowledge proofs. I mean, dude, guys, ZKPs, like, I actually can't even begin to describe like how a transformational zero knowledge proofs are to basically everything in this ecosystem. And the fact that they've been around for decades and had no practical implication meant that for decades they sat in like university research land where they weren't getting funded. Like, there was no one getting funded to research this stuff outside of within universities, and the funding was obviously not that great there. But since we obviously are scaling via rollups now, and since the advent of ZK rollups, the ZKPs, or zero knowledge technology generally, has gotten billions and billions of dollars worth of funding now, and we have some of the coolest stuff coming out of all of these funding efforts, including Plasma Next, including a lot of the technology that's being worked on to enable ZK EVMs and ZK rollups. And ZK proofs is generally there, but we're basically going through a huge renaissance in cryptography, and being led by ZKPs and being led by snarks and stuff like that. That's all enabled by crypto money. It's all enabled by the fact that people want to fund these things because they obviously think they're going to get a return on their investment, and this will not have happened if it wasn't for crypto. So that to me is really bullish overall. But yeah, if you want to learn how Plasma Next kind of has fixed this kind of dilemma that Plasma had for a long time, I think it's been 5-6 years at this point, you can go check out this post. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, last up here, I'm just going to do a little bit of a mini bullish rant. So I put a tweet out today where I said EIP-4844 went live on August 5th, 2021, which was towards the end of the last bull market. The merge and subsequent massive issuance reduction of around 90% for ETH happened on September 15th, 2022, in the heart of the bear market. Now, ETH will be net deflationary for the entire bull market. Buckle up. So the bullish rant starts now. Basically, I'm going to try and get through this without rambling too much, but the reason why I tweeted this out was because I read someone post something in the Daily Gwei Discord channel, I can't remember who it was, who said that this will be the first bull market where Ethereum has been full proof of stake. And then I thought about that. I'm like, okay, that's obviously true because Ethereum didn't become full proof of stake until the merge. But then what else did we have that was not part of the whole bull market? Well, of course, EIP-4844. Okay, well, what do both of these things together enable? Well, they enable a net deflationary ETH while still providing a yield for ETH stakers, right? Because we're still issuing new ETH, we're just offsetting it with the burn. So just these two things alone now have existed in the bear market, and now will exist for an entire bull market, and will exist for every bull market going forward. Like, I just can't help but think what that's going to do to the price, guys. Like, I mean, I know I've given my target 15K to 20K, and these are the reasons that go into that. But like, the more that I just kind of look at this stuff, and the more that I think about it and just reiterate it in my own mind, and the more that I kind of break it down, and then I think of everything else, like restaking and layer 2s, increasing the network effect of ETH, and the institutions and the ETFs and so on and so forth. I just get so stupidly bullish. I know, like, today, obviously, ETH's over 3K. At current time of recording, it's about $3,060, which is obviously a big deal because being over 3K is a big deal. And it looks like ETH wants to keep running to like 4K on this run in particular, but I think when I just kind of go through all those bullish catalysts that have just have not existed in other bull markets, we didn't have restaking, we didn't have ETH spot ETFs. I mean, to be fair, we don't have them yet, but if we get them in May, then yeah, we'll have them for the bull market, right? We only had EIP-4844 towards the end of the last bull market because the bull market ended on November 2021, which is only a few months after August, of course. And we didn't have the merge done in the bull market. That was done in September of 2022, which really was the heart of the bear market. I mean, it was like a couple months before FTX blew up, and then that was the bottom, basically. But now we have all of this stuff that we just haven't had before in a bull market. So that is basically, I guess, the main reason why I think ETH can go to 15K to 20K this cycle, and then beyond that, over the long term, I believe ETH can go much higher than that, of course. But you just take that all together, and then the only assumption that you really need to make. This is the beautiful thing about the Ethereum investment thesis at this point. The only assumption that you need to make at this point is if Ethereum as an ecosystem will keep growing. That's it. You don't have to assume anything else, because let's say the Ethereum ecosystem will keep growing. Everything else is a downstream effect from there. Let me spell it out for you, and this will be the final part of the bullish rant because I've gone over time here. The Ethereum ecosystem keeps growing. What does that mean? Well, it means the layer 2s keep growing. More and more people get onboarded. More and more people buy ETH and use ETH, right? So ETH's network effect goes up. Okay, cool. So how does that downstream to everything else? Well, of course, more and more people are going to stake their ETH. More and more people are going to restake their ETH. The more of this activity on the network means that more fees are being burned as part of EIP-4844, right? And that means that we're going to be net deflationary still. That is a meme that people kind of talk about and people kind of shill and people kind of highlight as a value driver. So from there, we've already got like all these value drivers that are capturing the value of an increased Ethereum kind of ecosystem, increased Ethereum growth, increased Ethereum network effect. So as I said, all you need to do is assume that Ethereum is going to keep growing as an ecosystem, and then everything else falls into place because you know for a fact that ETH will capture that value. I just gave you the value drivers there. I mean, ETH fees and burning, ETH users collateral, ETH staking, ETH restaking, spot ETH ETFs. I didn't even mention that, right? As I said, like the net deflationary nature of all of this, like. As long as Ethereum keeps growing as an ecosystem, ETH benefits from that no matter what. There's no way to stop this as well. Like EIP-4844 is not getting removed from the network. We're not going back to proof of work. Restaking is not getting removed from the network. And if anything, it'll get enshrined in the network. Staking is not going away. ETH users money is not going away. ETH users DeFi collateral is not going away, right? Once ETH gets a spot ETF, that's not going away. So like, as I said, all you have to do is assume that the Ethereum ecosystem keeps growing, ETH captures that value, and in turn, logically, the ETH should go up over the long term. That's my entire investment thesis really in a nutshell. Because, as I said, that's the beautiful thing. That's the only assumption you need to make. There's no assumption around value accrual, none of that. We know exactly how ETH accrues value. We're seeing it play out right now. ETH is a massive asset, guys. I know Bitcoin is already obviously really big, but ETH is a massive asset compared to everything else. Like, exclude Bitcoin for a sec. Obviously, Bitcoin is much larger than ETH right now, which I believe the gap will close over time. But right now, Bitcoin is much larger than ETH. Exclude BTC from the equation. ETH is just so much bigger than the rest of the ecosystem, and Ethereum as an ecosystem generally is so much bigger than everything else that as I said, the only assumption you need to make is that the Ethereum ecosystem will keep growing. And I know I've repeated that like 10 times now, but it was something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I was like, wow. How crazy is it that you don't really have to assume anything else? You just have to assume that. And how crazy is it that assumption is not a big assumption either? Because Ethereum is still very, very small in the grand scheme of things. Like within crypto, it's a big ecosystem. Outside of crypto, it is tiny. It is really, really tiny. It is just getting integrated into the TradFi systems with these ETFs, which is just the tip of the iceberg because ETH as an asset is just one part of the Ethereum network. The Ethereum network is so much more than that. So I think it's a really simple assumption to make. It is not a big assumption to make. It is not something that is risky. It's not like, oh, it's a 1% chance of it happening. I think there's like 100% chance of it happening. Even if you want to put like 99% on it, because obviously nothing is ever 100%, but you put 99% chance that the Ethereum ecosystem is going to keep growing for decades to come. Like I truly believe that. And if you do believe that, then it's really easy to buy ETH. It's really easy to hold ETH, even through the wild volatility that we see. And you do believe that ETH is going to one day be a world reserve currency. People will want to hold it as that. And that's what I believe truly. But anyway, I know I said I'd be short with the bullish rant, but I just realized I'm at 40 minutes. That's almost 40 minutes. That's nice. The refuels are getting longer, guys. It must be a bull market, right? Just the final thing here, I just wanted to give another shout out that I'm going to be at the Upside offices in Melbourne on Thursday, this Thursday from 5:30 p.m. onwards for their meetup. You can get the full details for this. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But if you are in Melbourne and you want to attend a crypto meetup and you're someone who doesn't really care for meetups, I highly recommend attending this one. Not just because I'm going, but because Upside always throws an awesome meetup. There's always a lot of people there, a lot of interesting people. They have, pizzas and everything when you arrive. It's a really nice office with like a balcony and everything. And it looks like it's going to be good weather on Thursday as well. Definitely come down. Don't miss this one, guys. And you can register. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. And I hope to see many of you there. If you are there and listen to the refuel, please let me know. I always love meeting regular listeners. It really warms my heart. So please let me know there. But anyway, on that note, that's it for today's extra long episode. So thank everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.